Chapter 2. We'll call him Rags. The boy chuckled, sprawled on his back. He had one leg over the other. Brolga snored by his side. Can you beat it? He thought. There's Brolga by me hip and the pups on me chest. Both of 'em snoring like mad, though the pup snuffles more than she does. He tickled Brolga's nose until she sneezed. When she awoke, he chuckled again. Yeah, he said, it's me, old girl. I've been lying here thinking. The pup needs a name. Now he's 3 weeks old. You can't keep calling him pup. Brolga sniffled. He waited for her eyes to open wide before he went on. The way I see it, he needs a name, so I reckon we'll call him Rags. It's a good name and suits him. He held up the pup to turn it around. Brolga watched the examination, then suddenly she whimpered. The sound cut thin and whining, intent on the pup. The boy turned to scold her, but stopped, open-mouthed. Wide-shouldered in the doorway, Kanga leaned on the jamb. The wide-brimmed hat shadowed his grim, carved visage. The boy scrambled up. Cor, he gasped. I didn't hear you. The dust must have made you quiet. Shamefaced, he rubbed his head. Straw brushed off with his hand. I was talking to Brolga about the pup and his name. I reckoned I'd call him Rags. The name sounded silly when he spoke it, yet he knew it had to be said. Kanga nodded. A trickle of dust slid down from his hat. I heard you, he said, and fumbled for his pipe. The pocket sagged where he pushed. Behind him flamed the raw setting sun. The boy pondered. Pucker lines creased around his eyes. Gosh, he thought, I like old Kanga, yet his quietness seems to squash you. He can't find the words to say. He lowered the pup, and it crawled between his boots. Yeah, he added aloud, there's something about it that suits him. He's raggy with them patches. He meant the color of black and white. Kanga filled his pipe. He did it in the way of a man who lives much alone. His great gnarled hands were tuned to habits. They curled around the pipe when he said, I wouldn't call it good. You can't call a king dog Rags. You want something fightin' like. He glanced from the boy to the bitch. She crouched, droop-eared, with submission. The boy saw obedience dull her eyes. She remembered, he thought, and she always will. Though I've fed her for weeks, she still knows he's her master. It's Rags I've got to fight for. Bending low, he clicked his fingers. Brolga crept under the bed. He pushed the pup after her. Worry made him sigh as he straightened. Do you mean it? He asked. Or are you still going to do it? Make 'em king dog, I mean. Kanga hunched while he struck a match. The light flared before he said, Dogs is dogs, son, whichever way you take 'em. I bred 'em for a king dog, and a king dog he's going to be. He lit the pipe between muffling hands. It glowed redly when he finished. The boy waited while Kanga turned to leave, then peered under the bed. Don't worry, bro, he whispered. I'll do my best. Old Kanga may change yet. He hurried after Kanga. Together they skirted the wood heap. From afar a mopoke called. They heard the night bird away towards the sandhills near where some she-oaks grew. To the boy the call sounded mournful, but Kanga strode unheeding. Bush sounds were part of his life. He heard, yet seldom heeded. Under the peppercorns he glanced around. The boy lagged yards behind. Kanga waited until he was close, then moved on. Together again they walked in the darker shadows. At the bunkhouse steps, Kanga paused before striding up. Come to see it, he said, in a different way. It'll maybe do it that. He was halfway up the steps when he added, the name, I mean. A man could call him Rags. His tall figure loomed as he pushed the door. The boy heard him stomp inside. The bunkhouse was small, with 2 windowed rooms, one each for Kanga and the boy. Left alone, the boy followed slowly. His boots clumped step after step in his room, he tumbled onto the bunk. The blankets felt hot and dry. It's good, he thought, to have a room and a place to put your head. It makes you feel kind of homey-like, as if you were set to stay. The last thoughts he had were of Kanga and the pup. He could call him Rags. Old Kanga didn't mind. When he awoke, dawn smudged the skyline. He could see pale stars framed in the open window from the distant forge. A hammer clanged. Steel slapped as if being beaten. Puzzled, the boy scratched his head. Someone for sure was shoeing a horse. Yet who? Barefooted, he crept to Kanga's partition. Not a creak or rustle came from the old man's bunk. Sure as can be, it must be Kanga. No other man would rise so early. Groping under his bunk, the boy found his boots. They hurt when he pulled them on, and he wondered if he was growing or whether the sun had shrunk the leather. Whatever it was, they pinched until he straightened. When he stamped, they eased to the shape of his foot. Phew, he thought. They hurt for a minute. One of these days I'll grease 'em. The boots felt heavy as he left the room. They always did, first thing in the morning. Outside he sniffed the smells that hung in the quiet stillness, the bittersweet peppercorns and the tangy saltbush. They smelled clean and fresh after a night's resting. Even the dust had a scent of far-off places, as if it had drifted miles. It made you think of warm red earth being blown along by the wind. At the wood heap he spat on his hands, then split a few solid blocks. Satisfied, he drove the axe blade into a log and left it standing. "You can stay here," he said, "till a bit more light. I'll drop in on Kanga. That's if it's him who's at the forge." On the way he noticed the stars were fading. Another half-hour, he thought, and the men'll be up. Miss Jones will be in the kitchen. The horse-yards loomed when he reached them. Their long weathered rails stretched away in the half-light. He followed them to the blacksmith's shop, then slipped inside behind a big black water butt. He settled to watch Kanga work. A tall bay horse stood close to the anvil. The animal's head was tethered to a ring. Its bright bay coat glistened under lantern light. Double under the horse, Kanga held its hoof across his thigh. A hammer rapped as he drove the last nail. He clenched it and let the hoof slide down as he said, "You can come on out. There ain't no cause for sneaking." The horse stamped heavily on the hard dirt floor. Nails gleamed on their bright new clinches. The boy straightened. "Can you beat him?" he thought. "He's better than a hawk. You can't creep near him. If he don't see, he hears." Moving slowly, he edged around the barrel. "Mornin'," he said. "I stayed in there because of your horse. I don't want to scare him." Kanga rubbed his chin. Grimy with sweat, the hand slid across his mouth. His voice sounded muffled when he said, "I broke him myself. He ain't the kind to scare, son." Then he reached to snuff the lantern before he added, "There's enough in the sky now. Dawn's a-comin' by." The boy nodded again. "Yeah," he agreed. "It's almost daylight." Hands in pockets, he bent near the newly shod hooves. "Core," he went, "you done 'em good, and only with a lantern. I don't know how you could see 'em." The old man grunted. Stiff in his slow-moving way, he filled a billy. Water spilled down its sides when he set it on fire. Above the hissing, Kanga said, "You get used to it. A man knows where their feet are." The boy nodded once more. "Yeah, but what about them nails? You got to drive 'em so they don't prick." Kanga heard but did not answer. He stared at the coals glowing around the billy. His hand pumped slowly on the bellows. From near the horse's tail the boy watched Kanga's face. Its lined, seamed skin reflected redly. I guess, the boy thought, he's seeing pictures, things and people he's known. A man like him must have seen a lot. And you'd think he must be tired. He's been working a long, long time. When the water boiled, Kanga threw in tea. The brown, stocky grouts frothed into a scum before settling as Kanga lifted. He set the billy onto the anvil and filled 2 brimming mugs. "Get it into ye," he said. "There's brownie over there if you fancy a bit of tucker." He nodded at a hunk of dark brown raisin cake. Together with the boy, he sipped the scalding tea. They leaned on the ledge of an open shutter. After the first few sips, Kanga drank great steaming gulps. The boy kept sipping while he wolfed the cake in mouthfuls. Through the rough casement frame, they watched the dawn sky brighten. Tinged streaks of gold spread along the horizon. In the hazy light, everything looked clean. Even the dust had a fresh golden tint. "You can't beat it," the boy said between sips. "I always wish I'd stay that way, cool and sort of hazy, without the sun blazing down." He glanced sideways as he spoke to see if Kanga was watching. The old dogman's gaze was fixed on the skyline. His great hands were clasped, holding the mug under his chin. Kanga drank a deep gulp. "Yeah," he said, "but it won't. A man knows that day'll bring the sun. You get used to it, son, and don't notice." He drained the mug, then turned to stow it in the billy. As he pressed on the lid, he added, "When you've finished, hang your mug on the wall. It ain't mine and belongs here." Swinging the billy in one hand, he untethered the bay with the other and led it toward the open front. The new shoes clattered loudly over some broken boarding. When the noise stopped, the boy called, "Sure, and thanks a lot. It went down good, Kanga." Without nod or answer, Kanga continued on. Outside, he turned eastward, leading the horse along the horseyard's fence. A night horse inside whined excitedly at sight of the bay, but Kanga spoke soothingly. The boy heard his quiet, steadying voice. Then Kanga and the bay were gone. They had turned a high-railed corner and disappeared beyond the stables. Emptying his mug, the boy hung it on a nail. For a moment he felt lonely. He remembered Kanga standing gaunt in the fire glow, with his hand on the bellows. "I'd like," the boy thought, "to be always with him." You feel he's safe, like a strong old tree, leaving the forge to its quietness. He walked across to the wood heap. As he picked up his axe, he glanced around slowly. The things he knew seemed to stand out more clearly. Later in the morning he called in to see Broga. Head to one side, she came to meet him and sniffed his pockets. He snatched up the pup from where it crawled, then fed Broga 2 chopped bones and a small piece of steak. "That was some of Ross's breakfast," he told her. "You was lucky I had the chance. Miss Jones left it to cut more fresh bread." Listening but not knowing, the bitch chewed swiftly. The steak disappeared when she swallowed. Squatted on the floor, the boy heard the chopped bones crunch. Broga held them down while she cracked them into splinters. "You know," he told her, "old Kanga's good. He had brownie there this mornin' and never ate a mouthful. Just left it all for me." Broga chocked on a splinter stuck in her throat. The boy thumped her back. "Struth," he went on, "you eat too quick. What I said about Kanga is right, but there ain't a chance he'll change over Rags. He's hard when it comes to dogs." The words were drowned by the crackle of Broga's gnawing. The boy stood again. "I'll leave you to it," he finished, "and do some more jobs." Outside, the sun glowed high in the east. Already the sky's vast blue had turned to haze. A flock of galahs, rosy tinted against the glare, whirled and argued above the peppercorns. Near the killing yards, black sentinel crows stood perched on the high gallows. One big sleek bird swung lazily on the rope. It had offal hanging from its beak. Ugh, the boy thought. They're real black sinisters, as old Joe calls 'em. If I was boss, I'd shoot 'em. They live in wait just for something to be killed. Leaving the shed, he padded through the dust to the big drinking trough. 20 yards long, it rested, bolted onto 2-foot-high timber stubs. The trough itself was galvanized iron, braced at intervals with curved steel supports. Groping under the ball-cock end, the boy pulled out a broom. After dunking it in the trough, he kicked off his boots and climbed in. Sloshing up and down, he scrubbed the galvanized iron until it was free of slime, then unscrewed the plug while water flowed out. He broomed the slime along with it. His legs were green when he finished. As the last swirl gurgled down the plug hole, he rescrewed the plug. Scraping his legs, he looked around to see Ross astraddle a tall brown horse. Sweat dripped under its belly. The overseer nodded to the boy, then they both watched clean, fresh water flow into the trough. In the glaring sunlight, the clean trough glittered. "You did a good job, Ross. I like to see clear water. The stock do better on it." The boy nodded. His boots felt hard when he pulled them on, and his toes itched with grit, but his feet felt cool and rested, shrunken almost. "The last time I did it," he told Ross, "there was a bog eye under the plug. He nearly bit me." Ross started to say, "A bog eye ain't much. They seldom bite you." Then he remembered Miss Jones. She had asked him to warn the boy. "Was there," he said. "You want to watch those fellers. I saw a horse bitten once. He died in 2 hours." The boy shivered, though he moved so Ross wouldn't see. He looked carefully before bestowing the broom under the trough. "Yeah," he nodded and straightened. "That's what I reckon. I don't like that little blue tongue they keep poking out." Ross wheeled his horse toward the stable. "So long as you watch," he called, "you'll be all right. You need good eyes in the bush." His horse skittered, springing it into a canter. Ross rode sure-seated in the saddle. The boy watched horse and rider until they rounded the stables. A thin trail of dust drifted after their passing. "It's funny," he thought, "how some men are. They look all right, yet you can never tell. I'd sooner be like old Kanga." A string of horses, coming in to drink, stared at the boy before lipping the water. He sat watching them play and sink their muzzles deep. Shaggy-maned, they snorted when water filled their nostrils, or sucked noisily in their teeth. Full-bellied, they rolled, kicked, and grunted on the sandy patch near the trough. Chuckling at their antics, the boy heard the dinner bell ring. "I'll leave you to it," he said, "and get some tucker myself. I'm glad you enjoyed the drink." Bootlaces dragging, he scuffed toward the kitchen.